Okay, you should be seeing my screen.
Yes.
And so today we are gonna talk about UI automation. So let's start by explaining what is UI automation. UI automation stands for user interface automation, and is the process of interacting with visual elements on the desktop using UiPath. So with automation, you can simulate the exact same behavior of the user dealing with the desktop. So this can be done in different way. For example, simulating keyboard inputs, simulating mouse movements and click on the items on the desktop, and reading the computer screen and grabbing information from the screen. So with UI automation, we can interact directly with the elements on the desktop application using UiPath Studio. It's a quite powerful tool, and this may be what differentiates with scripting and other items that we can use to perform automation on our desktops. The most used interaction with the graphic interface are desktop applications, web, and mainframe automation. For every object that we can spy on the desktop, we can have a specific set of interaction that are available. For example, if we spy a text box, we can write into that. We can select items from a drop-down list. We can if we have a box, we can check or uncheck the box. We can toggle different radio buttons and so on. There is a variety of interaction we can have on different elements depending of what are the elements. So if you already have familiarity with UiPath Studio and if you follow the previous session, you have started to navigate inside the UiPath Studio, you have seen that are already different activities that are present by default. If you want to check directly right now, you can go on the activities tab and you will see that there are a lot of activities already present. The activities related to UI automation are all inside the page that is called UI automation. There are a lot of activities that can be used. Most of the time you will use the activities that I presented here as an example, but there are many more of them. For example, the click activity is when the mouse interacts with an element that can be different type of elements. That can be a simple button, but you can also click on a field, on an image, let's say, or a box, and so on. It's possible to click both with the left or right button of the mouse, and also you can perform a double click, and moreover you can also click down and keep the mouse clicked down and click up maybe after some time if you need it. Another activity which is used a lot is the type into, that, as the name says, it lets you type into a text field with an input that is given by you. It can be a fixed input, it can be taken from a variable, it can also be matched with hotkeys. So you can, for example, send a variable plus the enter field on the keyboard. So you can use special keys during the type into. Another activity is the get text, which, as I said before, it lets you grab a text field from the desktop and returns the text value that is inside. It's possible to use different scraping methods, so different ways to get the text from the screen depending of what is the object type. So if it comes from a web page, for an application, for a virtual environment, and so on. So it's possible to retrieve the text in many different ways, but the get text is the mainly used one. Finally, this is just an example of 4, but for example, There is also the select item activities, which is quite used, and it's used to interact with a drop-down item and select the item that you can, for example, give again as an input by default or take it from a variable. What's interesting here is that when you spy the drop-down element, the list of items that are available to select is given as output. So you can select directly the item that you see, that you as at the same in the same way that you will be do as a normal user, let's say. The UiPath offers a powerful tool, which is the recording tool that lets you perform an automatic recording of all the action that you do on the desktop, and it returns a sequence automatically. We'll see in details right now how it works. So with the recording tool, you can save a lot of time creating an automation from scratch, and so it lets you capture every interaction with the desktop that you do when you start the recording. All the things you do on the desktop, so click, text typing, select a checkbox, and so on, will be recorded on your automation. When you then stop and save the recording tool, it will generate a list of activities that are the exact same thing that you just did on your desktop. So it's quite powerful and quite easy to start developing an automation with user interface. We will use in this example the modern experience tool, which if you recently updated or just installed the UiPath Studio, is present by default. You can check directly if you don't know if you have the modern experience. If you in the toolbar on the top of the UiPath Studio, you see the icon App Web Recorder, it means that you have the modern design selected. You can always change the automation type, so switch from modern design to classic design, which is the automation type that was present until a few versions ago, by going, as you can see in the image, into project settings within the studio, and in the general tab you will see that there is a toggle showing modern design experience. So if you don't have a modern design experience selected to yes, you can just revert it to yes, and then press OK. The studio will show a pop-up that says that you are required to restart the studio to apply the changes, and then if you just restart, it will go to the modern design experience. I will say that we are using the modern design experience right now in these examples, but you can just do almost the same with classic design. There are just a few changes syntactically and for button names and activity names, but it's almost the same automation behavior. So in the classic design, it was necessary to select the recording type. In the modern design, when you select start recording, it will automatically choose for you which is the recording type. But we will just quickly say which are the different recording types, because it's important to understand which is the difference, how the behavior is different. So the basic one, as the name say, it is a basic recording, which is used when multiple actions are performed inside a single window. So when you spy all the elements inside a single window, let's say in a single web page or just a single application, and you do just a few activities, let's say click, type into, click again, and stop, it uses the basic recording. It is lower compared to the other recording types, but is suitable for single activities and simple sequences. The desktop recording is used when multiple actions are performed in many windows inside the desktop application, as the name says. For example, it can be spying the notepad application, the calculator, or also more complex automation like like complex application like SAP or Oracle. When you record this type of automation, it generates a container with the selector at the top level, and all activities are enclosed inside this container with the partial selector for each activity. We will see later in the presentation the difference between partial selectors and full selectors and what are the selectors. The web recording, it's similar to the desktop recording, but the only difference is that it records web applications and browsers. So it uses the application as application a web browser. You can use any of the major browser with UiPath Studio. So Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, and Mozilla Firefox are all compatible using UiPath Studio. The only thing you have to do is to install the add-on for the browser that you want to use. But if you already installed it during the studio, during the installing of the studio, you don't need to do anything else. So by default, all the major browsers are already compatible. As the desktop recording, it generates a container and uses simulate type click input method by default. We will see in a few minutes how this works. Other types of recording that are less used, but it's important to know that they exist, are image recording, which is used to record the virtualizer environment like VNC or virtual machine and Citrix, and it uses the exact positioning of the elements to record these things. The Citrix recording has the same behavior of the desktop recording, but is used specifically for Citrix automation projects. So all the applications that are present in Citrix environments. Other than that, is the same as the desktop recording. And finally, computer vision recording is used to identify all the elements by identifying the images and positioning inside the windows. So it's used for recording that doesn't work in all the previous recording types, let's say, and it generates a workflow using computer vision. This is quite a complex thing, so for a starting session like this, it's not it's just useful to know that this exists, but it's not we will not see it more. So practically what does the recording do? When you start the recording, all the interface elements are highlighted when you pass on them, and you can work on them as a normal user will do. So you can select a checkbox, type into, and so on. Everything that you do on the desktop will be recorded. So be sure to press the right buttons and type into the correct thing that you want to type. It's after the recording is done and you save the activity, it's always possible to change what you just recorded. So it's not fixed. But if you recorded the right thing from start, the rest you have to change later. There are a few things that are not recordable with the recording tool. For example, the mouse over is not recordable because obviously you need to move the mouse to click and do the thing. So if it records all the mouse over, it won't work. Also, there are some keys which are used by the recorder himself, so it won't be recorded. We'll see in the next slide what are these. So as I said, during the recording, you can type text, click, select checkbox, and so on. There are a few keyboard shortcuts that can be used. With the F2, you can pause the recording for 3 seconds by default. You can also select a different pause time, and the countdown timer will be displayed in the corner of the screen. This can be useful when you have to pause the recording for doing something on the desktop that is not required for your automation. For example, if a pop-up unrelated to what you're automating shows up on the screen, you can pause the automation, close the pop-up, wait a few seconds, and go on. And with the Ask button, you can pause for good the recording, and you can see what has been recorded until now. If you press it again, the recording will be saved and you will be returned to the main UiPath Studio interface. As I said before, after the recording has been used, it creates automatically a sequence, and it's always useful to check for the selector that have been created by default, because there are some applications and some websites that have some selectors that are not so feasible, so that can change during the runtime. For example, for a browser, the URL can change, so you can maybe do some tweaks and some changes on the selector after it has been recorded. We will see later in the session how to work with the selectors. So right now we can see practically how the recording tool works. We use this website, which is a sample website that in which you can put your name and the month of your birthday, and it will return a fantasy unicorn name, so you can retrieve it. So this is the website. I already opened it before. So if we go on the UiPath Studio, we can just click on the App Web Recording. And as you can see, it will all highlight everything that is present inside the browser. So for example, we can start by entering our name here. So we can go on the text box, select type into. It will search for the correct selector and save it. And then we can directly put what is the value that we will put inside and confirm. So as you can see, it will put directly the value here. So after this, we can select the month. So we can use the select item. It will automatically show what are the elements inside that we can select. So we can select one and press enter. As you can see on the right, it will add everything we do on the screen. So finally, we do the click on the get name, which we can just go on the button and click. It will generate the get name, and we can retrieve our unicorn name by choosing the get text. So we added the get text. We can directly tell here a variable. We can create a variable directly here. For example, unicorn name. And if we are done, we can just save and return to Studio. So this is the automation that is being created for us. As you can see, by default, it created a container which shows what is the browser that we are using, in this case, Edge, and which is the URL that has been used. Every activity inside this container will be related to this URL. We can also change the URL with other activities, but in this simple case, we will use always the same URL. So, for example, if you put a message box at the end of our automation, that shows which is our unicorn name. And we run, this is okay, it's already here. We run this automation. It will do exactly what has been done by us before. As you can see in the message box, it will show our unicorn name. Okay, so for the next slides, I will hand over to Sean. I will stop my sharing so you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you so much, Stefano. That was very good explanation with regard to recording as well as the demo. I've already shared my screen. I just wanted to check if you're able to see it.
Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So the next topic we would be discussing initially would be selectors. I just wanted to share, after the selectors, we'll have a short quiz. So get ready for that. When we talk about selectors, we're basically talking about specific attributes of an element for us to be able to identify it accordingly through UI automation. Most of the elements that you would be identifying through UI automation, they would have a unique identifier or unique selectors. So whenever we are recording or whenever we are trying to spy an element, a selector is automatically identified by UiPath, and these selectors will be used by the bot to be able to determine which buttons it will be clicking on, or which fields it will be typing on. However, not all selectors are actually unique. So you need to be able to ensure that the attributes that you are using when coming up with selectors are actually tweaked up according to the requirements of the application that you are using, to ensure that your bot will be able to work in a manner that is expected in production. So typically, when a selector is generated or identified, we are also given the option to edit the target, to edit the selectors. Stefano was talking about a modern design experience earlier, and basically, just to give more context on that, there are two design experiences. One is the classic design, which was actually available prior to 2020. So when we were using UiPath previously, it's only the classic design. And then 2020 onwards, if I'm not mistaken, after 2020.4 release, the modern design experience was actually launched. And it actually made it a lot easier for us developers to make a more stable automation, because it actually gives us various options when we are interacting with user interfaces. The default by default, when you're using modern design experience, you're able to generate a fuzzy selector, where it's a smarter way of identifying the elements. Besides that, you're actually having selectors, whether it would be through image recognition or through native text. So you have these options with the modern design experience. The selectors typically are represented in an XML format, and you're actually able to identify the tags of each each selector, whether it's actually let's say an ID, a class, or a name, or a selector name, and so on. I was mentioning earlier that some selectors change, and these selectors would look the same but would have just minor tweaks that has to be done. Maybe let's say the browser URL, the layouts, or certain dates being shown in those selectors. That is where we can definitely make the change to be able to make it generic or even specific as well. We also have so this is how the selector editor window looks like. So if you're using the classic design, you'll mostly be seeing this only. But when we're talking about modern design experience, you're actually able to see various types of selectors, such as whether you're going to use a strict selectors only or fuzzy selectors, or you're going to include image or even text to identify. We also have we have examples of selectors in the next few slides. But another key thing to consider when you're using UiPath is you have access to what we call UI Explorer. So it allows you to identify the custom selector for a specific UI element. So you're actually able to dig deeper into the selectors while you're able to click some text box check boxes, which selectors you would like to look. You're able to identify the properties of each object that you are trying to define, and you're actually able to come up with various selectors that would actually suit your needs. There would be instances that you would be doing POCs for, let's say, maybe customers, or you just wanted to make sure that that UiPath will work with the application. So the good thing about it is UI Explorer is actually available as a standalone tool also for you, which can be downloaded in the Resource Center in the Automation Cloud, so that you can actually try to identify if UiPath will work with that system or that application. When we're talking about UI Explorer, you actually have various buttons that you would be using, and this actually helps you identify whether you have a suitable or a stable selector for your process or your object. So for example, validate, if you click that button, you're actually able to confirm that the selector is visible in that, or that target element is visible to UiPath. Indicate elements allows you to identify the actual element that you would be using to basically replace the
Sean, I think you're not audible.
Sorry, me, Rohit.
Yeah, we kind of lost you for last 30 seconds or so.
Oh,
yeah.
So sorry about that.
Now you're back. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rohit. So I was earlier I was just talking about the various buttons that are available in the UI Explorer. You actually have validate, which allows you to check the validity of the selector. You have indicate element, which allows you to identify a new element for your bot to identify to replace a previous one that was selected. We also have indicate anchor. So indicate anchor is basically allowing you to find a relative object or a relative element for your selectors to be more robust. Repair, it's very helpful to use repair in a sense that it actually creates and generates somehow a dynamic selector for you. So let's say if you have a changing selector, it's actually automatically able to generate a dynamic one, which will be typically we have to do manually. So repair helps a lot. Highlight just allows you to identify that you're able to see the correct selector as well. So the highlight button basically highlights the button or the element that you would like to see or that you are trying to capture. Another part that when we talk about selectors, one of the key important things would be where you'll be able to identify a full selector against a partial selector. So a full selector mainly includes a top-level window. So for example, if you have a browser or if you have various containers that you are using, it typically would include the top element. So whenever we are using recording, like what Stefano was mentioning, a basic recorder will actually generate you full selectors. A partial selector, however, does not contain the top level window. So if ever you have a container and then you have activities that are inside those containers, if you remove those activities there, you will be missing the top level selector, which will not allow your code to work properly. So it's really good to be able to identify the type of selectors, and this is how it looks like. So a full selector basically contains the application that you are using, whether it's a web browser, whether it's an application. What you're noticing here is you're actually able to see the top level part, and whenever you're copying this, whenever you're moving this to a different activity, you're actually able to get the whole. However, a partial selector will actually just contain the selectors of the activity or the let's say, for example, the button that you are using. It will not include the application that is being used. And we also have dynamic selectors. So dynamic selectors are the selectors that are actually changing. Typically, in order for us to work with dynamic selectors, we actually try to either use a variable or let's say maybe use let's say wildcards to be able to interact with the application or the system. And the most common wildcards that you would be using would be asterisks. And asterisk, what it does is it replaces 0 or more characters. So for example, if you are using Outlook, so typically you'll notice Outlook dash your name. For example, mine is Outlook dash Sean Llanto. I will change, let's say, Outlook dash and then put asterisk there so that it will be able to get the whole name and so on. So if you're going to use it on another Outlook, it will work. Another one is question mark. So a question mark just replaces a single character. And this is these are the most commonly used selectors or wildcards for the selectors. I'll have a quick demo on selectors, and basically what I just wanted to show is how to determine or differentiate the selectors or identify a dynamic selector. I'm just going to point at the home screen here, and what I'll do is I'll actually just open the target. I'll click target here, and I'll just copy this. And I'll just quickly put it on the notepad. It seems that something is blocking my screen. Sorry. Another thing that I'll be doing is I'll just click on accounts, or I'll just click on work items. Just waiting for it to load. And I'll just create another click activity here. And I'll click on home. So what I'm just trying to do is I just wanted to show you the difference. So it's the same button that we clicked. It's also the home button. However, what you would notice is the top part or basically the top selector is actually different. And if I would like for this selector to be generic, what I would do is I will so basically I would just need to use this one. And if I use this and click validate, it is still working. If I go back to the home screen itself and try to identify this one, it should still be able to see the home button. So that is one way of making some changes in selectors. Another thing that I would like to show would be with regard to putting a variable on selectors. There would be instances that when you are when you are using, let's say, various systems or applications, you'll be interacting with rows. And there would be cases that you'd actually be clicking on rows or certain buttons on those rows, or let's say maybe typing a value on a certain field. And how you'll be able to interact with those, it would be to making some, maybe putting in variables or arguments in those selector or in the selectors. So how do I, or what should I look for? Maybe you look for, let's say, maybe some table row, or let's say a column if there is. And what will happen here is I'll try to highlight, and what you're seeing is it's actually the second row that is trying to highlight. What if I change the value of this row to 3? You're having another value. So what we would typically do here is we can just perform a right click, and you can actually say use a variable. So I created this example. So now what it will do is it will actually ask for a variable instead. So basically there's no hard-coded value on your selector. And if, let's say, I have a row number here, like row number 2, if I just quickly run this, my bot should actually click the first one, or the first magnifying glass. Let's just wait for it to load. Yep, it's so yeah, it was able to click the first one. If we were to change it, it should be able to do this. So I'll change this to 3 quickly, and it should select the next one. And yeah, so that typically is how you handle selectors. And definitely we'll be happy to answer some questions if there are. The next part of this session was actually would be a quiz. So I'll pass the floor to Rohit for those quiz.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sean. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Thank you. I will quickly share the screen. So to join the quiz, I will request everyone to just go to painting.com and use the code 58779514. I will just write it on the chat as well. We'll wait for 1 minute for everyone to join. Please go to menti.com and use the code 58779514. The questions will be easy just based on the discussion that we already had. So it is definitely going to be fun. And what you need to do is not just to answer the questions correctly, you also need to be very fast at answering them. So the fastest answer will have even more points. So please do join. I can see we have 40 people there. I'll just wait for 30 more seconds just for others to join. So we'll have 2 questions right now, and then towards the end of the session, we'll have again 2 more questions. So there are 2, I would say total 4 questions, so multiple chances for you to come back and reclaim the top position. 48 people have joined. Last 15 seconds, just go to www.menti.com and use the code 58779514 to join the quiz. We have 84 people on the call, and we have only 47 participants. Let me wait for 10 more seconds. Please to join. Anyone struggling, please to mention on chat to if anyone is. I think we can get started. I hope everyone is already 49. Perfect. Thank you, whoever joined at the last second. So here we go. Please do look at the question. Again, answer fast to get more points. Which of the following is not a UI automation activity? Type into, click, print, and select item. Which of the following is not a UI automation activity? I think we have almost everyone who has answered the question. The right answer is print, and almost everyone. Here we are. Wow, this is very, very close. Enrico, currently you are leading. Puneet, Harshit, Guido, Anastasia, Daniel, all of you are very, very close. Here is the next question. I believe everyone has now gotten the gist of the competition. So please make sure that you don't just answer it correctly. You also have to answer it faster to make sure that you have better scores. So I'm now quickly going to the next question. Please pay attention. And here we go. Which browser can be used in UI automation? Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or all of the above? This is an easy one. I think everyone has voted on the above. Oh, we have 40 people who have gotten it right. We'll very quickly go and look at the leaderboard if anything has changed. A lot has changed, I'm pretty sure. Oh, Enrico, you're still leading, not by much. Guido is you're right there on number 2, Harshit on number 3, and Uber EY on number 4. So we will pause over here. We'll go back to the session. I'll let me tell you there are 2 more questions coming in towards the end of the session. So anything can happen. Things can go up and down very quickly. So please make sure that you are pretty much on your feet and pay close attention to the content from Sean. And back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Rohit. So I'm sure right now people are excited for the next 3, especially those that are falling behind Enrico. So Enrico, I believe you have a lot of competition there. So next part of the session is basically data scraping. And what is data scraping exactly? So from the terminology itself, it allows you to extract structured data from your web browser or an application. So it doesn't necessarily have to be web-based. Only if you have, let's say, a system that has a tabular structured data in there, you can actually use data scraping or table extraction accordingly. Considering that we have 2 design experiences, classic design actually has a data scraping. But in modern design, we actually use the terminology table extraction. Table extraction in the modern design, it actually combined screen scraping as well as data scraping there. The demo that we have will be basically performing data scraping through a web browser. What it will be doing is we'll be using acmetest.uipath.com/login, where the bot is actually opening the web browser, navigating to that URL. It will also be entering the credentials and logging into the portal. It will go to navigate the work item list, extract the table from multiple pages, and it will actually save the data into an Excel file. I'll just quickly run it so that you'll be able to see how it looks, and then let's try to replicate it accordingly. So what you're seeing is the bot is actually navigating to the workflow. This is also the same website we are using for screen scraping. I'd like you to take a look at this one. What is happening is the bot is actually navigating to each of the pages one by one. So it will be able to identify where if it's not able to go to the next button already. And after that, it actually saves the data into a CSV file. So this one is something that we can remove. When you open this, you're actually able to have an outcome of this value already. And you guys might be thinking, how complicated is it to do that through data scraping and so on? In fact, the part that we only just need to do for that for the data scraping is this section here. So what I'll be doing is I'll be deleting this one, and I'll also be deleting this right CSV. I'm keeping the other activities because this is what the bot will still be doing at the first place. But what we have done here is already we've opened the web browser through use browser use application activity, and it's able to detect that it's a browser, and then we're putting in the values. Do note that if it's a password, typically this should be masked. So just for the sake of this demo, I use this accordingly. But of course, don't forget to follow the best practices and standards. Typically, if you're going to use credentials, I just wanted to highlight, please leverage on UiPath Orchestrator for us to be able to put it in an assets. And then the bot is just clicking, logging in, and work items. What I'm using now is, so let me just see if I can move this around. So what I accidentally set my my system on would be a classic design. I'll change it to modern design later so that you can see. But what you would just be doing is after the work items, I'll be clicking on data scraping. Again, if it's modern design, you use table extraction. And then you just make sure that the web browser is available as well. So I'll just quickly log in. Just make sure that that it's refreshed properly. We're going to the work items page. And what I'll do is I'll just ask the bot to extract this. And how will I ask the bot? So basically, after clicking on data scraping, you just need to follow the prompts. So it says open the browser, click next, and then identify the data source that you would like to capture. So I'll just be clicking maybe work ID here. And it will actually give you another step. It will identify the whole table as it is. So it's asking you if you should extract the data from the whole table. From this, for this case or this demo, I want that to happen. So I'll click yes. And it's actually able to provide you the preview data. I'll just click on finish, and it will check with me if the data is spanning across multiple pages. So if you have a next button, typically you should indicate the next button. And then I'll just do that here. And basically that should be it. You're actually able to extract the data from that whole table. In the properties pane, there's an output here that says extract data table. So I'll just put in, so that is actually the output variable or that is created. I'll just put here, right CSV. I'll put the variable here, and I'll just put extract.csv. What should happen is we should be able to use this code already to extract to extract the data there. So again, it's trying to open the web browser, trying to enter the credentials, log in, click on work items, and then perform the necessary extraction. So after this one, we're actually going to proceed with Excel, the topic of Excel. And of course, consider as well that the size of the data that you would be scraping. Once that's finished, you actually have the output extract.csv. And then don't get me wrong, I just use CSV here. You can put it on an Excel file. With RPA, you're not limited to just putting it into a CSV or so. If let's say you need to enter the data into another system, another portal, you're able to do that as well. If there are questions, please feel free to raise it in the chat. Yeah, and this is basically what we did. Now we'll be talking about Excel and data manipulation. What we did here, in the interest of time, is we're actually putting the demos at the end. So most of the parts here will just be slides, and then we'll just show you a quick demo afterwards. But what is Excel automation? Of course, when we talk about Excel automation, I think most of us who are even in the IT industry or practically anything that has to do with office work, we're always using either Excel, Microsoft Word, or PowerPoint. So with Excel automation, what can we do? Of course, the bot will be able to read and write the data. Other than that, you're actually able to perform other things such as sorting, filtering, performing pivot tables. You can actually work across various sheets. You can create a sheet, you can delete a sheet, you can remove or add rows and columns and the likes. You can replicate the data into a report. You can come up with another Excel file, basically to perform data reconciliation. And then, of course, after extracting this information, what do we do with it? Some would actually be sending an email with the report that was generated. Some would then capture this information from the Excel file, maybe enter the data into another portal or another system though it's a desktop or a web application and so on. And another part would be, what do you do after you extracted this information from the Excel file? So yeah, so you have the option to to actually just put it. So you put it on another location. You save it, let's say maybe on a SharePoint link or so. Practically anything that you are doing on the system, you'll be able to do with UiPath. I'm just showing quickly the UiPath Excel activities. There is a wide range of activities that you will be able to leverage on. And the good part is this is available through your UiPath Studio. Even if it's a community edition or an enterprise edition, you're able to access this. So you just need to go to manage packages and actually look for UiPath.excel.activities, and you should be able to do it. We also have data tables. So if we are handling Excel files, you're mostly going to encounter using a data table. And data tables have various activities available as well. And do note that a data table is not the Excel itself. It's the output of, let's say, maybe capturing a data from Excel, or you can actually build the data table directly without using Excel initially, and then maybe putting the data into another system and so on. And these are some of the activities that you would be doing often: merging of the data table, performing data lookup, filtering, removing duplicates, and so on. We also have another another common thing that we are doing or when handling data would be performing data manipulation. And data manipulation is basically a process in which we are altering the data to be able to facilitate its use for maybe another system or another platform. So you can basically modify a data, you can restructure it, you can format it, you're able to sort it, and so on. So that is what we do when we're talking about data manipulation. It allows us to be able to customize the data to be able to generate a desired outcome. So if you have multiple columns, for example, and you need something that is concatenated, or you need to connect one column to another, you typically would be using a data manipulation there. And when we talk about data manipulation, it's not very hard to correlate it to variables, in the sense that you may have a data that is in form of table, but you would need maybe a certain scalar value, which is a string or a number. So you would need to manipulate that data so that you'll be able to get the certain outcome. And of course, it will always depend on what the need, but you have these various variable types available to you in UiPath. You have characters, booleans, numbers. You also have arrays, lists, dictionary is one of the most common ones as well, and strings, as well as data tables that we are actually commonly using. And I believe this was discussed in the previous session, so I won't go detail into these ones, but feel free to raise some queries in the chat box if there are some. So another part that another common thing that we are doing on data manipulation is basically if we are retrieving certain values, or if we're trying to extract, let's say maybe the last word of the sentence, or the last character, or even the first two characters, or first two letters, for example. If we're going to add the data into that structure, if we would like to delete the last part and so on, or just maybe modifying the data structure, that is typically what you would be doing. If we are talking about variables, typically what you are doing is you're using assign. So assign is used to be able to convert assign is an activity in UiPath. It is used to convert the data from one variable type to another. If we are working with other variables, let's say if you're using integers and you would like to use it and convert the data type into a string, typically you use a .toString method. And you also have a generic value variable, which allows you to store multiple, or I would say a generic, from the term itself, a generic value. It may be a text, it may be a number, it can be a date, and so on. So you also have a generic variable available in UiPath. So a string is typically the one that is being used when we are dealing with data in UiPath. Because it's one of the easiest to manipulate. It's one of the easiest to actually modify. So as you see here, this is just a sample variable that you use. If you would be entering data maybe into a form that would not require any calculation, typically you can use a string directly. If you would be entering data or using certain information that just has to be passed from one portal to another and the likes, typically you'd be using a string. Some of the common operations that you would be using for string manipulation is concatenate, which basically connects two values. If let's say you are searching, or if you are looking to identify, let's say, certain words that contains a certain value, you can use contains. You can also use format to be able to convert an entire expression into a string. So that is another commonly used method that we will be using. And then index of returns the zero-based index of the first occurrence of the character. And then you can also use join, replace split in substring. I won't go deep into this one, considering that we have 2 demos as well afterwards. But feel free to raise queries, questions, and then the team will be able to answer that in the chat while we're doing the demo. We'll be presenting the demo. So one of the demos that we would be using is actually we'll be just opening an Excel file. We'll be reading the columns from A to D. And what we'll do is we'll just be concatenating the column values. And then we'll just go through each of the rows. So I'll just show you the Excel file that we would be using for this. So what we are expecting to happen would be, we have the name Mr. We have the salutation, first name, last name, and company. And what we would want is for the outcome to be like this. The salutation, the first name, the last name will be used. And then we will just add works for into the statement. So I'll delete this first, and then I'll run the demo, and then let's build it accordingly. Let's just wait for the bot to load. Sorry, it seems it opened the other screen. But yeah. I just showed the outcome. And it's basically the same as what you've seen earlier. So seems here we just need to add another space. But let's build it accordingly. I'll just create, first I would just go back to the modern design experience. And this is where you make the change. So you go to project settings, you go to general, and then you just click this one. This will allow you to move from one design experience to another. I'm just creating a new sequence. And we actually have, so typically when we are when you're using the modern design experience, you're actually able to see also or allow to show the classic ones. So you're not really limited to just using the modern design. Let's just use an Excel process. So as best practice, it's suggested to use the Excel process scope. And then you use the use Excel file. Here, you're going to identify the Excel file. So we are actually using this data input as well. So let me just delete the last column there. Then I'll just save this. Let's just refresh just to. So the good thing about the modern design experience is that you're actually able to see the values immediately. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to have or to see the concatenated value from A to D to E. So I'll just actually mention what I would like to write. Oh, besides that, I'll use for each, because I would like the bot to go through each of the Excel rows. So I'll just put for each Excel row. So this one will actually allow us to go through each line or each row within the Excel file immediately. And it's able to identify that it's going to be the current row of that specific sheet. So here we are identifying that we wanted sheet 1. And then let's put a right cell. Let's also identify that we're using has headers, because if we don't click has headers, the bot will just, or UiPath will just consider that it is a specific column. But if you use has headers, it's also reading the value within the column itself. And now it's able to identify each of the column in our Excel file. So the first thing I'd like is salutation. And then I will just put here the other one. I'll just current row dot by field. Here, hold on, let's put double quote. So any string that you are using in UiPath, you'll have to put it in by double quote. First name. So this will allow me to have a space in between. So typically what you can do is you can also immediately put this and then put another space. And where to write would be, I would just put a concatenated statement. And once we do this, this is actually the process for that first demo. So it keeps on opening on the other screen. But yeah, so that's the first one. Another demo that I would like to show you would be, we are reading an Excel file, and then what we will be doing is we would like to actually put it in, let's say, a website. So almost the same steps, but we'll be using a web browser here. Rohit, do you think we still have time if we build this from scratch, or you just want me to present the solution accordingly? I'm just in the interest of time. I know we have 15 minutes.
Yeah, we have 15 minutes. Maybe if we can just conclude it by that time, that would be good. Yeah.
Okay. Considering you have two more quiz, what I'll do is I'll just present the solution. I'll run it. Yeah. I'll present the solution and then show the outcome. So the next demo is basically opening an Excel file. We are just reading the columns again. We're opening a web browser. We're going to navigate to a URL. We're going to enter the data into that URL, and we're going to submit the values. So the website that we would be using is actually SurveyMonkey. So we just created a very quick website that is, or very quick survey that's asking for the name, last name, gender, which country do we live, and what is the date of birth. And what the robot will just be doing is it will actually just open this and go through each of the lines and enter that data into a website. I'll just quickly show the demo, and then I'll run you through the solution. So I've already triggered the bot, and it seems it keeps on opening the Excel file from here. Hopefully this gives you guys an overview of what the bot can do with UI automation. I'll just quickly run through the solution. Since we're using an Excel file, like what I mentioned earlier, we're going to use an Excel process scope. And we're actually also using a use Excel file. This is where we identify the file that we are going to read. And then if we want to iterate from on multiple rows, we will be using the for each Excel row. Right. So this is an activity that is available directly here. And you're not limited to Excel as well. You have for each row in the data table, for each file and folder, and so on. And after we read that, in the modern design experience, if you're actually going to use a web browser, you would actually use use an application. You should use a use application in browser, and then you will be indicating that application, and the bot will be able to determine already whether it, or UiPath will be able to determine whether it's a browser or an application itself. In this case, this is the URL. Of course, you should be using a variable if you're going to use it in production. And then you're just going to use say either a type into a set text to be able to enter the data. And here, similarly, you're actually able to identify because you're using the for each row, you're able to identify that this is the name, the gender, and these are the UI automation activities that Stefano was talking about earlier as well. And then use the click activity to submit. And then we also have a navigate browser, so that let's say if you'd like to perform a go back, go forward, go home, refresh, and close, you're able to do that. Do note that there are other properties that you can leverage on when we are talking about UI automation. Please remember that there are properties that can be considered. So whether you actually have, let's say, the timeouts, the delay after, delay before, and so on. These are some of the things that you should be considering when performing or building a UI automation on your projects. Basically, that is the end of the demo. I'll be passing it back to Rohit for the part 2 of the quiz.
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Where we left off, I hope everyone is still on the I hope everyone is still active to the Mentimeter page. If not, please go to menti.com and click on the code. I will again paste the link over here and directly go to the quiz from this link. We'll just wait for 10 seconds for everyone to join. So we have 2 more questions. Everyone has a chance to read the score over here. So please make sure that you don't just answer correctly, you also have to answer faster. So let us all, I hope everyone is set for that. We have 49 people over here, and here we go. Question number 3. How many characters the question mark replace in a selector? 0 or 1, always 1, 0 or many, 1 or many. 3132, your last 10 seconds. How many characters the question mark replace in a selector? Time's up. The answer is always 1. And most of you have gotten it right. Let's see where everyone is. Enrico, you're still the fastest, but as you see, the margins are closing down. So this is the last chance for everyone to get their shot at the prize. The top 2 winners will get the awards. So I hope everyone is on their toes. And here we go for the last question. In the modern design experience, what are you going to use to extract tabular data? Data scraping, screen scraping, table extraction, UI Explorer. Last 10 seconds. In the modern design experience, what are you going to use to extract tabular data? 3, 2, 1. Time's up. So for the moment of 20 people, okay, a lot of you couldn't get this one, but let's see where everyone is. Awesome. Ober Eva, you are the winner. Enrico, you are in the second place. So, but that is truly not by much. We will make sure that there is a similar exercise for the session 4 as well. So you still have many chances to win the rewards. Ober Eva and Enrico, please do DM me on Zoom your email ID so that I can share the gift vouchers with you. Please make sure that you do that before closing the session. That is it on the mentee side. Sean, would you want to close it from here? Sean Stefano.
Thank you so much, Rohit. So
Yeah.
from our side, in behalf of the UiPath community, in behalf of the trainers, we'd like to invite you for the session 4, which will be happening this Friday. The topic is on advanced practices with Studio and Orchestrator. Please join that session. We have a lot of demos that are going to happen. We have the trainers very excited to present to you the capability of the platform. And thank you for thank you Dillan for joining. And yeah, that's from my side. Stefano, Dillan, the floor is yours.
Thank you as well from my side. It's been a great pleasure to present you, and I hope you all enjoyed the session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stefano and Sean. Also, a big thanks to Dillan for making sure that the chat has always been very responsive and answering all the queries of the participants. Here is the link for all the, for the next session, which I've already shared on the chat. Please make sure that you register for it so that you get the right notification at the right time, and so that you can add it to your calendar as well. Loredana has also just mentioned the forum chat thread as well. So if you have any queries, if you have any questions, you do not have to wait till the next session. You can just go on this forum thread and post your question there, and all your queries will get answered. That is it from our side. The recordings will be published